Okay, we're continuing with Hidden History of Health and Nutrition by me, Pete Rogers. We're going to be talking today about psychiatry. I'm going to tell you why psychiatry is evil. Psychiatry is the worst field in medicine. It'll all make sense here in just a little bit. So first of all, here's just the cover of the movie It's a Wonderful Life with Jimmy Stewart, Donna Reed. This is one of the greatest movies of all time. What does it do? It celebrates where real happiness comes from. Friends, family, love, religion. That's where it comes from, spending time together. And he's a great man, Jimmy Stewart, and he did all kinds of good things, and he was down on his luck, and just watch the movie. It's like one of the most magnificent movies ever made. And a culture that can make that movie is right. Atheistic Darwinism can't make a good movie. It just ends up nonsense. Okay, some, battling robots or some other nonsense like that. Here's the painting from The Destruction of Empire by Thomas Cole, the great landscape painter of the 1800s, mid-1800s, the Hudson River Valley School. And this is just showing destruction of empires. What I basically seen is when you have an atheistic culture, there's always endless war. They just want to get more powerful than their neighbor. Then they want to say that their neighbor is, a homicidal maniac. Therefore, they have to go in there preemptively and kick their butt and take their stuff. And it just goes on and on and on. Endless fighting. And it's all just a power grab. So you need a religion to get people to be nice to each other. Otherwise, they won't be nice to each other, and to sort of unify them. When you hear diversity is our strength, what that means is diversity amongst the people not being unified by a religion makes them easy to control, like a bunch of stupid slaves. When you don't have a religion, you end up like with what happened in France, 1789 to 1794. You end up with the guillotine. It's a magnificent book, A Tale of Two Cities by Charles Dickens. Tells it like it is. Ann Coulter wrote a great book about this too. She's so smart, that lady. She wrote a great book on biological evolution, how Darwinian evolution is a joke. And she also wrote a great book contrasting USA 1776 versus France 1789. They're totally different. USA was a Christian desire for freedom and no taxation without representation. Whereas 1789 was atheism and the destruction of the church and the country. Coming out of Voltaire, Rousseau, the philosophe, Diderot, all those jerks. Okay. All right. So here is a good quote to summarize what happened in Russia in the 1900s. Alexander Solzhenitsyn, author of Gulag Archipelago, A Day in the Life of Denisovich, he said, "If I was asked to summarize why did Russia bump off 65 million Christians in the 1900s, I would say it's because man had turned his back on God. The entire Soviet system runs on atheism." Yep, that's why Stalin celebrated destroying all the churches in Russia. Okay, he destroyed 48,000 churches, and he wanted to destroy every last single one of them. Churches are the center of art. They go with universities and learning, charity, development of homeless shelters, the university system, the Catholic school system. Okay, so what can I tell you about psychiatry? Peter Broggan, he's like the greatest psychiatrist who ever lived, Harvard-trained guy. He said almost all psychiatric drugs cause brain damage, which over time leads essentially to a type of chemical lobotomy. Antipsychotics can rapidly mentally disable a patient. More gradual with benzodiazepines and antidepressants. So here's the great book of The Pharmacology of Psychiatry with explaining the side effects, Peter Broggan. So there it is. And he also talks out, they all cause brain damage. Electroshock is a very rapid cause of brain damage. Psychosurgery, a very rapid cause of brain damage. And it's not just Broggan. Anybody who's looked at it closely comes to the same conclusion. Here's Grace Jackson. All that stuff about the single neurotransmitter, single diagnosis here, it was all made up just to sell drugs. Here's Grace Jackson, drug-induced dementia, the perfect crime. She's a psychiatrist, and she went through all the pathology, autopsies on these brains and how the psychiatric medicines just destroy the brain. They're all bad. Okay, here was a good book about a treatment of attention deficit, for example. He goes into some other drugs, but Robert Whitaker, he's not a doctor or anything, but man, he's real smart. He's got a bunch of great YouTube videos. They all got YouTube videos. Broggan's got YouTube videos. Grace Jackson has YouTube videos. Joanna Moncrief got YouTube videos. Lots of people. Anybody who looks into it sees this, okay? Here, Jim Davies had good stuff about what a joke the DSM is. Here's a good book by Thomas Szasz, The Myth of Mental Illness. I'll give you a couple quotes by Thomas Szasz. He's a psychiatrist from Hungary, and he says, giving a child psychiatric drug is not medication, it's poisoning, and that's correct. You shouldn't be giving amphetamines to a kid. The only reason they give amphetamines to children is because it's profitable. So some scumbag at one of the Ivy League medical centers lies about the results with these drugs, and then everybody just follows it, and then it becomes written into the standard protocols, and all these kids get poisoned. That's how it goes. And nobody cares about the kids. They're just low-life children of the proles. That's a fact. Okay. Let's see what else. He says, in the animal kingdom, the rule is eat or be eaten. In the human kingdom, it is define or be defined. He who defines dominates. If you want to exclude people from a social order, you must justify this to others. So you invent a justificatory rhetoric. That's really what nasty psychiatric words are all about. To justify giving these people drugs and making them outcasts from society. You legitimize the removal of people from society when you label them. It's like labeling a package with the word garbage on it, okay? This person's a schizophrenic, this person is... Okay, those who suffer from and complain about their own behavior are usually classified as neurotic. Those whose behavior makes others suffer are usually classified as psychotic. Being considered or labeled mentally disordered, abnormal, crazy, mad, psychotic, sick, it matters not what variant is used, is one of the most profoundly discrediting classifications that can be imposed on a person today. Mental illness casts the patient out of society just as surely as did heresy or a witch in medieval society. And that is indeed the very purpose of these terms, to stigmatize. As the base rhetorician uses language to increase his own power, to produce converts to his own cause, and to create loyal followers of his own person, so the noble rhetorician uses language to wean men away from their dependence and to encourage them to think for themselves, to speak clearly and teach them how to be their own masters. So Thomas Szasz continues, a mental hospital is a cemetery for the living dead. The dormitory beds are the grave sites. The psychiatric diagnoses are the gravestones. The psychiatrists are the grave diggers. And the patients are the corpses. Pretty harsh, but pretty true. A lot of times they just keep piling on more and more medications, and eventually the patient has no hope of coming back. And Thomas Szasz continues, psychotherapy is the medicalization of human social problems through and through, 100%. Psychoanalysis is medicalization squared. Psychiatry is medicalization cubed. The less a person knows about the workings of the social institutions of a society, the more he must trust those who wield power in it. And the more he trusts those who wield such power, the more vulnerable he makes himself to becoming their victim. The fundamental conflicts in human life are not between competing ideas of which one is true and which one is false, but rather between those who hold power and those who use it to oppress others, and those who are oppressed by power and to seek to free themselves from it. Self-respect to the soul is like oxygen to the body. Deprive a person of oxygen, you kill his body. Deprive him of self-respect, and you kill his spirit. Okay, and then the last joke. What type of stress is the most dangerous? A mistress. Okay. Anyways, you get the point. I think we'll leave it at there, and I hope you found that helpful. And so, psychiatry, it just lies. Its drugs don't work. They have tons of side effects. They cause brain damage, and the patient ends up worse off. The patients that are cured for schizophrenia, if you treat them with drugs, it's very low, like 15%, versus if you treat them with soteria, like residential supervision, it's about 80-85%. And similar numbers for depression and a lot of other psychiatric diseases. People need to engage in society. It's very rare that the problem, don't get me wrong, sometimes they are really, really out of it and they need to be sedated or something. That does happen. But the vast majority of people are just overwhelmed by their problems, and they can often do better if you give them appropriate guidance and their load is lightened. Some people can't handle a heavy load. They just can't. So they need to do something simple. Anyways, hope you found that helpful.